3. September 28th, regular meeting OBGMA. You can call the roll.
Director Whitman?
Here?
Director Daddy?
Here.
Chair Hages?
Here. Okay, the pledge, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, director announcements. Peter's not here. Jim is on his way. City of Ojai. Do you have any?
Nothing to announce.
Okay. Bob?
Nothing to announce for the Community Water District.
I don't either. Okay. General manager comments.
All right, so a few things I've been working on. The website is going to go live on Friday the 13th of October. One thing that we should have on there for transparency purposes are board member contact information, probably your email. So if you don't have any objections, I'll just use the email that we normally use to send out the agendas and put that on there on the website. Okay. Let's see, we got a well application for 1388 Orange Road, but it was confusing and incomplete, whether it's a replacement well or they're rehabbing their existing well or a new well. So I will work with them to straighten all that out and bring it back in October. And then still working on, my focus for the next couple months is gonna be wrapping up those final meeting minutes that are hard to track down if they were done or approved or not. And then the audits for the past few years, that still need to be done. We need those in order to wrap up the LAFCO report. So those are gonna be my things, unless you wanna add anything else to my plate. Hearing none.
Julia, any indication of when State Water might want to tell us what's happening with our application?
I haven't heard a peep out of them. They have until January. I did reach out to our local rep who covers our area to introduce myself and let him know that I'm the general manager, so he can reach out to me directly. But that was it. He just acknowledged that he got the email, and that was it.
Any other questions? Okay, for the record, Director Finch is present. Okay, status report on the basin.
Thank you, Chair Hages. Let me share the screen here and get moving from the beginning. So what better way to go than to the beginning and talk about at year's end. It's pretty much where we are. September 30th being the end of the water year here in Ventura County. So where did we land? We are more than double our average with a seasonal total on the valley floor of 44.07 inches. Up on the ridge top, 76.14. This is quite a bit of water, as you can imagine, every month, but April and July of this water year, we've had measurable rain. Of course, that water year ends Saturday at midnight, and we're all hearing about a little bit of sprinkle coming in over the weekend. So we'll see if it gets under the wire, a buzzer beater storm, as we might call it, for the water year. So a couple interesting things. It's been amazing to watch this year. We're probably closing the water year with the highest autumn storage since ever. When I was looking at the hydrographs and some of the data, it seems like the the closest we had to this status in September was 1983. That was obviously a pretty wet year. I think we understand it to be an El Nino year. We all remember the big rains and big surf of that year, of course. And of course, the discharge to the creeks that we see from the perch system, it really continues similar to some lower storage years, and 2019 in particular. But I'll show you what jogged my memory about that a little bit later. With respect to the long-term hydrograph, that near historic peak in April, we've come down. Good amount of footage, around 43, 42 feet. Since then, we're probably still going to see some decline this fall into the beginning of water year 23-24. But our depth that we measured yesterday, 80.09 feet, that's about 84% of capacity, or 67,200 acre feet. And this was the hydrograph I was looking at, trying to find when and where the closest similar autumnal low we had was, and it was about 1983, and that was still 90 feet below ground surface of the key well. So where are we with respect to input and output and storage? Coming in off of Gridley at about half a CFS, similar Senior Canyon. Thatcher's trickling in at 0.08, but of course that's more in the basin as opposed to right near its edge. Reeves actually at 0.11. Surface flow out of Montgomery at 0.26. Let's see, 0.3 at Stewart and Fox up there. And out of the main channel at San Antonio Creek, 4.75 CFS. So our total inflow of 1.1, outflow at about 5 CFS. Obviously that's a significant amount coming out versus being in, and it's attributable to the Swazi or the perch system that we'll talk about a little bit later as well. So a little quick tour of what that looks like this time of year. Coming in over the Ladera Road dry crossing. Under it, actually, it's all trickling through the grate up there on the upstream side of the Arizona crossing. There's the trickle in at Thatcher under McNell Bridge. Reeves coming on in. And then where it starts to discharge, it's of course dry from a lot of those points, but where it starts to discharge on San Antonio Creek is right about here. There's a nice little bay tree or bay bush that has found its way to the right spot for maintaining its wetness here. I put my machete into some rocks. If you pull that out, you are not the king. But you will notice my GPS there in the lower left-hand corner. And I was looking at that because after I set this waypoint yesterday, I noticed, I've got a lot of waypoints on this handheld GPS. And one of them was this, we refer to these waypoints as with a NEOSF or north edge of surface flow, and then the date. And you'll see 6/12/19. Like, wow, that's really close to where I went yesterday. So when I zoomed in, they're practically right next to each other. That 50-foot scale bar at the top, this is just the screen on the GPS. But it's an interesting way to just have a memory that, wow, that 6/12/19, when incidentally water levels were still rising at that time in the Key Well. We didn't hit our peak in 2019 until July, whereas we hit it in April of this year. And here we are at about the same point, similarly, for daylighting water in San Antonio Creek as of yesterday. Down over underneath the Stewart, Fox, Montgomery Creek, whatever you want to call it, underneath Creek Road, that's the tenths of CFS. And there's the main portion of San Antonio Creek where it leaves the basin, where we're getting close to 5 CFS. Now, it looks like a lot of water, and it looked pretty similar for a while. And folks I talk to around town will say, gosh, it seems like there's so much water flowing out of the creeks now. Like, well, there's a lot of water there, but it really is moving pretty slowly. In fact, and that's a key component for flow, is the velocity, the cross-sectional area times the flow. And what we do is we have our I've showed this to you before, but this is our impeller. It's a flow meter for open channel flow, and we measure the velocity at various locations along the creek and transect, and that's a 1.5 feet per second velocity, and that's really slow. We've had it up to 6 feet per second in this very spot this same year. So just kind of interesting. Another interesting thing that happened in the past couple of days was that the county uploaded their data from Old Creek Road. And it's not the radar data that they've collected, but really a corroborated, more defensible number. It peaked at 2,900 CFS on January 9th. So what I thought I'd do is kind of compare that to what we've measured at our snapshot readings every month. And if we go to December of the last water year, they had 0 CFS, no flow, it was dry, but our measurement of 0.15 and 0.3 CFS, so a little less than half a CFS flowing out of the Ojai Basin area. If we go down to January, it's 4.3 that they measured. We had about 2.89 CFS flowing out. So not all of the flow that they were seeing was coming from the Ojai Basin. And this little exercise was kind of fun. We're at 34 CFS that they measured in January 24th, whereas we were at about 23. And it's not always consistently that lowest percentage. At March, they had 91 CFS, and we measured actually at about 29 CFS coming out. So there may have been some issues with blockage in San Antonio Creek that we were addressing with debris at that time. 55 CFS in April, 54 of which were coming out in our measurement points. And then similarly in May, we had 31 CFS that they measured, and we actually measured about the same coming out of Ojai. 26 at, that should be June. We had a little over 20. So it was kind of interesting. Then a lot of folks are talking about how wet it's going to be this year. And while all signs are pointing to an El Nino, one thing that you'll notice if you've been around, that we've had really wet El Ninos, we've had really dry El Ninos, we've had really wet La Ninas, we've had really dry La Ninas, and we've had a whole lot of La Nadas. And in this, I just downloaded this additional slide for showing what NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is predicting for at least the next 3 months, and it's equal chances of average, which is always a good bet. And in this case, it's looking like it's wetter in the southeast part of the country and drier in the northwest, but right through where we are, equal chances of average. I've heard that it's the January, February, March that will be wetter overall. Time will tell. All right. Any questions?
Did you say the basin level?
Yes, I did. We're at 80.09 feet below the reference point in the Key Well, and I think that was 84% capacity. You'll see, I sent the PDF of this presentation to you, so you'll be able to download it and put it on the web.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
The next item is public comments on items not appearing on today's agenda. Is there anyone who has any public comments? Okay. Item 7 is a consent agenda. We have the financial report and minutes of the August 31st meeting. If you have any questions or comments, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, item 8 is action item. That's the Casitas OBGMA staffing agreement. Julia?
This was an item that was brought up as a draft at the meeting in August. And since that time, both the agency's council and Casitas's council have collaborated to come up with the staffing agreement that's attached to the memo. Trying to think of what the changes were, Peter. Can you summarize them quickly?
Yeah, there was a change to section 1A. Casitas's council indicated that there might be a possible conflict between the provision that was in item 1A and determination provisions later in the agreement, and in order to remove any sort of misunderstanding, we just eliminated that term. We also narrowed the indemnification provision in item 8. Item 8, previously, the previous draft that the board reviewed, there was a broader indemnification whereby Casitas was required to indemnify, defend, and hold OBGMA harmless for virtually anything arising out of the contract. And Casitas's counsel came back and said, well, that's not really appropriate. Might be more appropriate is if the Casitas indemnifies for any employer-related obligations set forth in section 2. And that seemed appropriate to me, and that was the other change that was made in order to make this acceptable to Casitas's counsel. And those were the two changes that were made.
Okay.
Then the plan would be, if you take action to approve it today, this would go to the Casitas board at their meeting of October 11th. They didn't have a meeting yesterday. It was canceled, so it would go October 11th and then be retroactive to October 1st.
Any questions? Any questions by the public?
None here.
Hearing none, let's,
I'd move approval of the contract.
I second.
call the roll.
Director Whitman? Director-
Yes.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, item 9 is a public hearing to consider an ordinance to protect the southwest upper saturated zone from groundwater extraction and depletion. Ordinance number 12. I'll open the public hearing. And the board have any comments or questions?
So it has been confirmed that no wells are impacted by this, right?
None that we know of.
Yeah. Okay. That's the key, probably, that we know of.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I'm sorry, I forget what the point of this provision was. What were we trying to protect?
This is to protect what the perched zone, so that no wells are drilled in there to extract it for, domestic or agricultural use, or that they're properly cased through that zone.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. I remember. Yep, thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments? Okay, pleasure of the board. I'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the board.
Move approval?
Call for a vote for approval?
Need a second.
Second.
No, yeah, that was
Aye for second.
for a second.
Okay. Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, item 10, discussion items, groundwater sustainability plan fee and wellhead fee cost of service model. Julia?
Sure. So we talked about this a little bit last time, kind of set the stage for the GSP implementation schedule and the fees and tasks that we're estimating in order to get all that done in the next 5-year period. And a mechanism to fund that, because there are a lot of expenditures associated with it. So I developed a really basic spreadsheet model. I attached the output of that under different scenarios. I couldn't get it all on one 11 by 17. It would have been impossible to read. So it's kind of broken up by fiscal year. So the assumptions that I made, if you look at the first attachment, was that if we did implement a change to the groundwater sustainability fee, it wouldn't take effect till January 1st, because we're already at the end of September, and you'd have to go through that process to a couple board meetings to make that change. So the first set of data is for the just Q1 of 2023-24, which will start on October 1st. And then the second set is if we bumped up the fee or changed the fee for the rest of the fiscal year, quarters 2 through 4. And then it follows, the next couple pages. So the yellow columns are the ones that I changed, the estimated pumping and the GSP fee. So the first row, row 4, is just leaving that GSP fee at $37 for the next 5 years. And if you flip through to page 3, even if you flip to the page 2, you can see that first row goes negative in 2024-25, based on the estimated expenses for the GSP implementation. And then it's negative, all the way through 5 years in the whole, $528,000. So that's the do nothing scenario. And that's all based on an estimated 3,000 acre feet per year of pumping.
And what do our actual last 5 years show of pumping? Because there's a
That is a very
huge
good
difference
Yeah.
between the 4,000 and the 3,000. It is
Yes.
it is a massive divergent.
There is, and that's, again, this is like a flexible model, so I can change those two, yellow columns to be whatever scenario you think. It looks like 4,000 acre feet a year is kind of an average, not counting the drought years. So, and now we're not in a drought, right? So I was trying to kind of look ahead to what that might look like. So the first, few rows 4 through 9, start at 3,000 for the first quarter. And actually, and it's 25% of that. So there's cell formulas in there. And then going further out, I've changed it a few times. And it can be a steady amount. We can bump it up or down. You can see I started at row 10 with 4,000 acre feet a year, and then played around in subsequent rows to bumping, down to 3,500 for a couple years, and then back to 3,000 for a couple years. So I can play with those amounts, on the assumptions. What looked like, even at a 4,000 acre foot level, if you look on page 3, it still ends up in the negative. It's just less negative than the assumption of 3,000 acre feet a year. So somehow it needs to change. We can't obviously maintain the status quo of $37 an acre foot and fund the GSP implementation out of it. And I can pull up the model if you want, and I can play with numbers. This was just kind of my first stab at it. And I'm happy to change the assumptions, based on your input and feedback. It looked like maybe what I would prefer is, I don't like the paycheck to paycheck scenario. I'd rather have something built up before we need to spend the money. So I'd rather be, in the black next year and subsequent years. So that means bumping it up to $60 starting January, maybe up to $100 the following year. We really need to get that money, we need to have it before we can spend it. Right, and we're gonna have to engage, consultants to help us with the implementation. And I wanna be able to pay their invoices in a timely fashion, as I'm sure they would want to. So my goal was to try to build up the reserve over the next 2 to 3 fiscal years, and then maybe think about if our expenses go down, because we'll have that 5-year update done, then we can think about reducing it after that.
So question,
Yeah,
I always like to start at the conclusion.
okay.
Starting at the beginning makes no sense. What reserve do we feel is actually necessary to have, and when?
Well, like I said, I would be shooting for having a good amount of reserve in fiscal 25-26. That row 6, that's bumping it up to $100 per acre foot. But that's only, assuming 3,000, that's row 6. The reserve there is about $14,550, which is, okay, but not super comfortable. If we assume, 4,000 acre feet a year, we could keep it at 60 and still have a little bit in the black. Not a lot. If we assume 3,500 next year, it just kind of depends on the assumptions of how much we think is going to get pumped. Go ahead.
Question. I guess I'd just like to do numbers different. What have we spent outside of our special program where we needed to, take care of state? What have we been sending? 70 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand? How much have we been averaging over the last 5 years
I think
without special projects?
The DUDEC report itself, I want to say, was in the $200,000 range,
Yeah, I think it's about 200.
something like that.
And that's without us having to do that $300,000 plus state water thing, right? Or was that included?
That's for the groundwater sustainability plan.
Right, but we're not gonna do that often, right?
Well, we'll have to update it every 5 years.
Right,
Which
okay.
isn't
So,
5 years away. It's
so if we need to do that, then we've got a long, slow ramp. And
5 years isn't that far away. We submitted it in January 2022.
Yeah, it's not, it's 2.5 years
It's,
away.
it's sooner than you think. And we have to do the work ahead of time in order to submit it on time.
so I would respectfully submit that maybe what we need to do is have a glide path to a couple of $100,000 in reserve, because we know we've got the expenses.
Mhm.
They're there, they just haven't been incurred. And we will have that deadline on that. And so I would hope that we can go ahead and, let's start now, because I really hate to see it go from 37 to 60 to 100, where we keep bouncing it up and down. I'd kind of like to have it, it's not going to be slower because we have to get to a certain amount, but I would like it to have it steady and not jerk up and down. That's
Okay.
my personal thought.
And the OBGMA fee is $25 an acre foot?
That's the extraction charge, yes.
So why not, how about 75?
Try 75 across
Make-
the board,
Makes for to start with this,
the GSP.
for the GSP, it makes 100 for this next year, right? The two together, starting Q2.
Here we go. Let me share my screen.
I know this is not relevant to how we think about it, but as the person who writes the check at this table, United went to is at 109.72, some strange number. They just went up, and then with a couple other, the Fillmore Piru Basin Pumpers Association and some other things, I mean, they're all into that 115-ish, give or take.
So you're saying 75 plus the 25 we already.
That you're already at. And you're still probably gonna have to go up after next year. You know, I don't see the municipal doesn't fluctuate. I'm sure the graph looks similar to what I saw at Casitas's. It's more steady than the ags, but
Yeah.
I don't see the ag ever increasing much in the current environment.
What do you think about the 3,000 acre feet per year assumption? Do you think that should be more like 4,000?
No, I mean, you have the combination of bad economics in agriculture combined with, you know, if you think that we do have El Nino next year, if we hit Jordan's 50-50 realm of whatever their wording was.
I had this data here, the historic pumping, but it stopped at 2014, and I couldn't track down the rest of it. But you can see, I mean, during some wet years, it's
Yeah.
definitely in the 4,000,
And
5,000.
5,000s.
And 5,000.
You're not gonna hit the 5,000s again.
Okay.
You've got a lot, you've got ag that's out.
So at 3,000, this row here, if I bump it up to 75, I mean, we're still, in the red.
You said bump it up to,
If
but
it-
not add. Bump it up, but not
If,
add.
just make it 75.
Okay.
For next year, I think
For
you
next
probably,
year, okay.
you know. you're
Starting
probably gonna
January
have to-
1st?
Well, as soon as you can, which would be January 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if we
And
left that,
Just to be clear, though, we're talking only about the GSP
GSP.
implementation
Right,
fee.
because
Yes.
the other one's at 25 and that's capped.
That's capped.
So it makes for a nice round 100.
Yeah.
the other piece is the wellhead fee.
Right.
That's another thing. That's not for GSP implementation, that's for normal operating expenses, and that's the next topic. The other rate model.
Kara,
Okay.
you don't think we're gonna pump more than 3,000 acre feet?
You know,
We can revisit this every year again.
Well,
I think you probably will. I think you'll be 3,500, you know, someplace in the middle.
yeah.
But, you know,
What do you think?
I don't think, you know, when I look around the East End, there's more groves that have been not irrigated in the last couple of years, that there's nothing happening on them to make me think that they're gonna start being irrigated.
Yeah.
I mean, so that, keeping it at 75, even into next 24, 25 fiscal year, still leaves us in the black, right here. Then that's when, the following year is when our expenses bump up, 415,000 compared to 147,000. And that's when we start getting in the red.
So you'd have to go to 100.
So, yeah, exactly. Something like that. I mean, yeah.
Eh.
Yeah.
Then I'll guarantee you this costs aren't gonna go down.
Right. And I'll make the same statement this time on this side of the table. You will hit that point where you'll start cutting. As we ramp it up, we'll stop losing ag usage. So it's gonna be that balancing act.
Yeah. So if I keep it 75 starting January 1st of 2024, for those 3 quarters, we'll be fine, be in the black. Bump it up to 100 the following fiscal year, that gives us a good chunk in reserve, because then the next year, the expenses bump up and we're still okay. We're still in the black.
And you can earn
And that's
5% on the money.
And that's going back down to
make it.
75. Or, I'm sorry, that's staying at 75. Just for the GSP fee. So it could get bumped up, just not this coming fiscal year, not this January, but the following one. So we go from 37 now to 75 on January 1st of 2024, and then 100 January 1st of 2020, or
And when you say-
October 1st of January.
And by going January 1st, the first time the people are gonna write the check at that is gonna be after March,
Right, it'll be in April,
be in April, the April check.
yeah.
And that's based on, how many acre feet they pump, right?
Correct.
Yes, that is a per acre foot fee.
And if they pump less than 1 acre foot,
You still owe?
they don't owe.
Not,
Just owe the wellhead.
right, which is the next model.
It's under 1 acre foot per year. So a lot of people do a half an acre foot, report it for a quarter, so that makes it 2 acre feet per year,
Mhm.
but it's per quarter we're talking, right?
Well,
I'd have to look at the form.
yeah, I mean, this I all did just per year, just based on 3,000 acre feet total for the year. Not, I didn't break it down into like, you know, there's more pumping in the summer than in the winter or
No,
anything like
you're
that.
right.
It's not that sensitive of a rate study to be like a cash flow. It's not
Right.
cash flow.
So it would be better to keep the increases all in January instead of October?
Instead of October,
We're just late for October.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
this year.
This
this
year.
year,
Next year, we can
do October
go a month earlier and do it in.
as part of the budget or something.
Yeah, well, we could approve the whole thing at once and don't have to do it over next October.
Unless you wanna revisit it, unless we don't get 3,000 and our reserves aren't where we want them to be.
Yeah, let's just, I mean, you're probably going to 100, but we could look at it in
Yeah.
the July, I guess you could wait till the August meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, how much of a process do we have to go through to implement this?
Nothing.
Well, we gotta, so certain findings need to be made. They're not incredibly complicated, but we should probably do some work to justify the findings. One of the findings is that revenues generated will not exceed the cost to fund the GSP. I think the materials that were prepared for the last meeting that show what it's gonna take to fund the GSP, I mean, we can use that certainly, and I don't think that increasing to $75 an acre foot is going to cause any problems there. The second finding that needs to be made is that the fees imposed bear a fair and reasonable relationship to the benefits received by the payor. That's a little amorphous, I think, but generally speaking, you know, that needs to be a finding that the board makes. So I think we can do this with one board hearing. I don't believe that it's gonna take two.
And there's nothing in that, what you read or said that says that it's not prudent if we declared we want a year's worth of reserve. That's prudent. I mean, Casitas has tries to have more than a year, or at least a year, and they've tapped into it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having a savings account is prudent.
I think that is, understood to be part of.
Okay.
Well, you know, what the cost of implementing the program includes a reasonable reserve.
Right.
and just to make sure, I don't know if I said it explicitly, but the estimated expenses in here are from the GSP implementation schedule that you guys approved the last time, that larger, well, actually, it's on this.
Yeah.
It's this tab.
The most prudent thing we could do
This
is
one?
get the 5-year thing pushed to 10 years.
so if you'd like, I can come back the next time with what we went through here on row, was that row 6? Yeah. With, $75 starting January 1st of 2024, and then if you, I mean, do we wanna just do 1 year, or do we wanna do the whole 5 years at that meeting?
And then,
Well, part of the justification is the 5-year cost estimate.
is that big,
Yes.
huge thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, don't you need to go to the 100 then in the following year?
The following year, yeah,
Yeah.
or, I'm sorry,
So
October
why don't you put
1st.
that in the plan? And
Okay.
so then you're not playing, then you don't have to, if you want 75, 100, and then ran it out. And then you could just show it at 3,000, 3,500, and 4,000, and see where we get.
Okay.
But we're not playing with all the different rates. We're kind
Gotcha,
of,
okay. Then, so this one showed, that row 6 showed 100 in 24, 25, but then back down to 75.
and you're never going down. So you go to 100 and then you stayed at 100. Or, if we got really lucky or something, you might, not pull,
If we got 10 years between surveys,
yeah,
that would be the only thing that could bring it
right,
down.
right.
Have we done anything on that? Do we have Bennett working on that? Are we asking for that?
I
Are we
missed-
saying basins that are only of a certain size should only need to do it once every 10 years?
Yeah, we haven't, since they haven't approved it, we haven't gotten that far yet, but
Once they approve our study, then we do the ask?
I think we all ought to be talking to them and, throwing in something if you're above certain thresholds where you could skip. I mean, because there's a lot of money that just goes into
yes.
papers and not projects.
Well, the other thing, reality is if we're only gonna pump 3,000 acre feet, we don't even need to do this. I mean, it's,
Well, that's an ask then. You're less than 5,000 acre feet, shouldn't have to do it. So,
they'll never let go of us, so.
Okay, I'll bring that back next time, show you the results of that,
But do-
those scenarios.
Do we need to approve 75 as of January 1st today?
Today?
No, I don't think so.
I think we need to bring that back as a formal.
Because we've got October,
It's just a
a nor-
discussion item
is a
on the
norm-
agenda
okay.
today.
but you have no November, right, meeting
Yeah,
or something
we'll have
like
at
that?
least one more meeting. Two more,
Gotta
two
notify
more
the
meetings.
public, right?
Yeah, we'll have 2 more meetings.
So we have to notify the public about the potential fee increase so that they have the
Yes.
ability to come back and say, we don't like the fee increase.
Absolutely. This was,
Okay.
as Julia points out, this was agendized as a discussion item, not as an action item. And so we need to bring this back at the next meeting with a draft resolution for the board to approve.
is that a 218 or is that a different law about noticing the public that we're,
Yeah, that's the Brown Act. And I believe Sigma is, well, I'm not gonna speak on the Sigma requirements, but I'll make sure that we're in compliance with them when we bring this back at the next board meeting.
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on it, but I understand this isn't subject to Prop 218.
So,
But we still owe them a notice that we're having a hearing.
yeah, Prop 218, we're not required to comply with Prop 218 because that would actually require a vote of the majority vote of the folks affected. This is not a property-related fee or tax. This is the groundwater extraction charge. And so we don't need to comply with Prop 218, but we do need to comply with Prop 26.
Yes.
And that's where those findings that I discussed come in. And so we just needed to make sure that there's, evidence in the record to support the findings being made to increase the fees in the amounts suggested.
So we talked through one part of Julia's equation and worksheets, the wellhead fee we did not
Yep.
discuss.
That's the next tab on my little spreadsheet here. So the wellhead fee is a fixed charge. You pay that whether you pump anything or not. It's $260 a year, so $65 a quarter, and it's meant to cover our normal operating expenses. So I put this model together. Again, I used the same scenario, so it wouldn't be implemented till January 1st because we won't have time to implement it October 1st. This is based on the number of wells that report. I just used an average of 150. Right now, like I said, it's $65 per quarter. So we start going, we're fine if we keep it.
So
Actually,
what is the 195, just 3/4?
yes, this is one quarter, the quarter that's coming up, and then this is like status quo
Right.
row right here. And then, yes, then that's 3/4 for
Okay. I get-
quarters Q2 through 4.
Okay.
And then again, it's, and then back to 260 for that year. And you can see, we do okay, but we start getting a little bit in the red
How,
as we go out, and then even more so. This one was a little bit actually more difficult for me to wrap my head around because we don't have a reserve policy of how much we want to keep in the bank for normal operating expenses. So I played around, again with this. If we bumped it up to $600 a year, $150 a quarter, we build up by the end of that 5-year period, a decent amount. That's about 1 year worth of operating expenses, $120,000 or so. I mean, you can see, it bumps up to about 150.
So
We
the-
get, play with it a little bit more again, and this is based on 4,000 acre feet a year.
no, it doesn't matter on
Oh,
this.
it doesn't matter, you're right, this should be just,
It's based on 150.
it's based on 150, you're right. Did I mess that up?
So is this reserve balance you're showing, is this for OBGMA or
Yes.
everything?
For OBGMA,
Just OBGMA?
just, yeah, for just
Okay,
normal
all right.
operating expenses. Yeah, that column shouldn't be there with the pumping.
I mean, I'll liken it because I sat in at the Casitas meeting a month or so ago, or a few weeks ago. And this is the same as your meter charge or standby fee if you're Edison. And it's, if you just had that kind of 6 months where nobody was turning on the water in the winter, so that you'd still have the money to keep the lights on, pay the managers, and go about administering. Doesn't do us anything on all the state required reports.
There are a little bit factored into the expenses, like Peter's time, Jordan's monthly updates, things like that. The normal things that we do are factored into those expenses. Those are from the budget with a 5% increase each year.
And we could always, if we have a reserve, which would be nice in this, we can always borrow from it if we have to temporarily, just for cash flow purposes.
Yeah, so I needed something to shoot for, basically. Do we want 1 year, 6 months of operating expenses, in the bank? Do we need to adopt a formal reserve policy?
I'm gonna sorry to go a different direction, but I'm still I think one time you showed, of the 150 wells, 2 to 10 acre feet, 10 to, I don't know what it was, 25, 50 acre feet, 50 to 100 and 100 plus acre feet. How many, what's the bell curve of, a couple of big wells that pump a lot of water and a few small wells that pump just 2 to
That
4 acre.
wasn't me.
Okay.
I don't remember creating that.
And so what I'm interpreting this to mean is a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, 3/4, and a 1 inch, and a
Oh.
2 inch, and a 2 inch valve.
Similar-
And we
right.
have significantly different charges with casitas for the size of the meters.
That is
And
true.
so I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to say.
No, I'm
If-
just, yeah.
With
because
large pumpers, they'd get the big meter charge.
This,
I would say a dozen, there's probably a dozen major pumpers. And the rest are relatively minor, or we don't know.
No, we need to know sooner or later.
Yeah, well, that's part of what we have to do. So of the 150 estimated wells that we have, how many do report?
that's probably all the report.
Pretty much.
Yeah, these are the people that pay.
Right,
So these aren't the de minimis.
right. So I can play with this a little bit more. I think, I haven't come across a reserve policy that was adopted by the board. I feel like that probably needs to be the first step, and then that's what I shoot for, you know, or what we shoot
But-
for in this fee.
Would you go back and look, I don't know, maybe 12 months ago, maybe a little longer? I remember having a discussion with John, and he said, if we don't get the grant money in, we don't have enough money to pay our bills. I certainly don't want to have that kind of reserve. We were waiting for grant money.
Was
And-
that was the grant for the GSP implementation though?
Right, but we were still paying the bills. And,
Yeah, I mean,
and we
that's a
were,
separate-
and, right, and
that's why I
so
prepared that
we
one.
got, I thought we got well less than $100,000 in the reserve at that
Right
time.
now?
No, at that time,
Oh,
when we
at
were
that
going through
time.
this.
There, I don't know what the
Okay.
banking statements or balances were at the time, but we did spend, you know, a lot for DUDAC to finish that
Yeah,
GSP, and they were, you know, continuing to provide support services, you know, last year.
Well, we kind of bootstrapped it, or whatever the term is. I mean, so, yeah, we were down to tight things. I like round numbers. I'd play with 100, which would take it to 400 for the year.
Right.
okay, but that's not, the acre feet don't matter.
I know they don't. I
No,
need to delete
okay.
those columns. I should just do it right now.
I think,
I apologize, I've got to get on a 4 o'clock phone call, but we're just in a discussion item. And my only comment would be that on the wellhead fees, it looks like, we're okay, but at about year 2025, 2026, we start going in the red. And so I agree with Julia that we should head that off and,
Oh, I know.
get the increase in the wellhead fees before we hit there.
Now I remember why I had those the pumping on there.
Richard, may I make a comment?
Who's that?
This is Bert Handy. Can I make a comment?
yeah, go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, for information, just so you know, you're adjoining GSA, which is the Upper Ventura River. They do not have wellhead fees. They charge $148 an acre foot for the water. And what they do is have the M&I people pay a year in advance for what their anticipated water usage will be, and then they adjust it on a yearly basis. Mound Basin does the same thing. Just another way of looking at this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bert.
So the reason I had the estimated pumping in there is because those are two sources of revenue, the wellhead fee and the extraction charges.
Which led to your total
reserve.
Oh, okay, so you have the $25 per acre foot number in there as
Yeah,
well, okay.
That's why the
That
estimated
makes
pumping was
sense,
in there.
yeah.
So that was why the reserve was the combination of the wellhead revenue and the extraction charges revenue minus the estimated expenses. I even left myself a breadcrumb there where I
So you can,
say what it's.
you can just hit undo and go
I know, I
Put it
have to,
back.
so I have to go back and do that.
Yeah.
upper left circle.
Yeah, I think I did a lot of things. Okay, maybe that was enough.
Well, I think increasing the wellhead fee has more than one benefit. I think we might flush out some people who actually aren't using their wells. We could get them, write them off.
And I left the extraction charges revenue consistently just $100,000. That's what we had in the budget this year for our estimate. And again, it's kind
Well,
of
but
based
your
on.
model ought to tie, because the 100,000 is based on 4,000 acre feet.
Right, I probably need to tie them together. Whatever we use
Yeah,
for
the
the
one-
GSP, we should use for
Yeah.
the other. So I'll make those
Yeah.
adjustments.
Okay. Pardon me? Well, if we increase the wellhead fee, it may get people who are not using their well to abandon it. Only we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I can make adjustments to this and I can bring it back next time if we want to discuss it one more time to see what those results look like. And then at the, combo November or December meeting, take action on it.
Okay, can we do this at a special meeting?
Or a special-
There's only one regular
Aren't we
meeting
asking
left.
to not have a November meeting
We would combine November and December, and that's another
That's
item on
usually
the
what we
agenda.
do.
in October?
No, we have a regular October meeting, and then we combine November
Okay.
and
So
December,
we'll still have one of the two.
typically early December.
Okay.
But is that okay to do it at a special meeting rather than a regular meeting?
Yeah, I believe it's fine.
I think that's a good course of action then.
Okay.
And bring us the draft findings and all the pieces that you can
At a
put
special
together.
meeting.
Are we allowed to,
Let me make sure I understand the sequence of events here. So do you want this special meeting to just review the new model results?
It's just an out of sync November, December meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
It's not that it's just for the topic of this.
Yeah.
It's just that otherwise I don't want to see you guys on Thanksgiving Day. I'm sorry.
is there a reason we couldn't
Have
go
turkey.
over this in October?
That's what I'm asking. Do you want to see the next
October.
set of results
as
at the October
much of a
meeting?
finished product as possible in
Okay.
October,
Oh, I guess
so that we can review
But
it and
Julia,
schedule a hearing.
Julia's right. It's not. We just do it on the 30th, which is a normal, and then skip December.
Well, that's the next item I have.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, we're
discussion
gonna-
item.
I'll shut up.
we could do that. That would be
But
better.
I liked that you said Julia's right. I never get tired of hearing that.
Put that in the minutes.
Yeah.
Julia's right.
Then we'll
Okay,
change it to
so-
Julia's always right.
I don't know about that. That's a stretch. Let's see. So October 28th, I'll bring back new model results with the revisions that we just talked about, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I think if we have it as much of a draft of, a rough draft of the findings, the resolution that we're gonna use, so we have all the pieces,
Okay.
right?
And I'll get with Peter to make sure the timeline and all the boxes are checked for COP 26 and all that.
Okay?
Are you saying that we're going to have more meetings than we have scheduled?
No.
No. Okay, that's the next item, is to schedule the November, December board meetings. And one as Jim said, the 30th
So the
is
the
well
30th,
past Thanksgiving, so we could just do the regular meeting.
we could,
And then we can cancel the December meeting at that meeting if we want to, rather than do it now.
yeah.
That
The
way,
only,
in case we need something, we have to meet under a Christmas tree.
so then, we had talked with the city about council chamber availability through the holidays, so we can, actually, did I have that as I had it as a discussion item, and my memo says there's a recommendation, so delete that part. I'll bring, at the October meeting, or no, at the November meeting, we'll keep November, or October, November, as is, and then at the November meeting, cancel the December meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
The reason I'd wait to cancel it is I wouldn't be surprised if we hear from the state 2 weeks before Christmas. We have 30 days to reply.
Yeah, about the 17th of December, we get it
15 cancel.
with a list of
We'll
10
have
things.
December 5th, stick with October, November,
Okay, so I'll
as
let
is.
them know.
Yeah. Okay, I think that was all. on the
Okay,
agenda.
anything else?
Yes. Are we getting closer to getting people to pay and to identify what's going on? And how many actual wells we have? Are we getting there? Because
I'll say this, we're not going backwards.
That's
We
good.
are going forward. We're getting, there have been a lot of new well owners since I was here before. So contacting them, as I mentioned before, a lot have management companies out of Ojai. So contacting them, getting them caught up, we're working on that.
okay, but they're cooperating. I mean, they do know that it's a charge they need to pay, or they're just ambivalent.
Well, a lot of them don't know anything because they're a management company and it's a second home and there might not be anyone there reading it. So I'm kind of doing some investigating and getting them the statements that had been missed.
Could then, when we send out our statements next time, can we put something in there, a special little slip that says we need to have the billing address?
I have the billing addresses now.
Okay.
Really to talk to the head of watershed, and I got it from them. I got all the new billing addresses, not phone numbers, but billing addresses. So we've been working hard at updating our database to those, and then actually finding out some have changed again. So it's been a lot of phone calling and locating people, locating who's, someone used to be in charge of it, now someone else is, or it was sold in the interim. It's kind of, it's a lot of investigating. And also, we have already packaged half of the statements up, ready to mail, and then our printer died. So my call is to get it out at least like the last week of September, so you have it, and if you haven't read it, your meter, it prompts you to read your meter and put it down. Because that's the problem I'm finding, there aren't people reading meters like in the past when I worked here. There aren't people on the property. So it's educating and investigating. We are collecting, I think, for me, it seems like lots of money. Someone came in and wrote a $3,000 check because they were behind. So it's,
Good, thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned. 4:08.